from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Checking on crop progress from USDA, including conditions in the northern plains, and agribusiness, tracking dairy markets.
Looks like we're seeing some better money flow, better economies, and people are just eating, looks like, more cheese, eating more in general.
And putting paws on guard. These Texas canines are protecting their flocks from predators in the Lone Star State.
Agday, brought to you by the dependable, longest-lasting Chevy Silverado.
Good morning, I'm Clint Griffiths. After an early run-up of summertime heat in the Corn Belt last week, grain traders watched the crop progress report to see if the condition ratings felt the effects. Starting with corn, 67% is called good to excellent. The combined total is unchanged from last week, but there was a 2-point shift into the excellent category. A 1-point improvement in the 3I states, and Minnesota saw a 3-point gain with 81% now good to excellent. In the East, Indiana continues to struggle with 45% in good to excellent shape. Turning to soybeans now, 67% is good to excellent, a 1-point improvement from last week. 89% has now emerged. That's 5 points ahead of average. Winter wheat harvest saw decent gains overall from last week. 28% is now in the bin. That's up 11 points from last week. Texas harvesters saw minimal gains, up just 2 points, but the harvest is well ahead of average and 74% completed. Kansas saw an 18-point gain, now hitting 22% harvested. And spring wheat continues to struggle over much of the northern tier of states. 41% is considered good to excellent. Minnesota, the only exception, with 89% good to excellent there.
So we're looking at a situation where yield's going down, meaning we won't have the bushels on the high protein wheat, followed up by the winter wheat here that there's poor quality and lack of protein. So now we have this protein issue. And condition ratings in spring wheat, I want to say it's the lowest in 29 years since 1988. Chicago wheat, their condition ratings, the winter wheat is, I want to say, like 11 or 12% below last year. We have the lowest acreage. On top of that, you throw in the situation where Australia's dry right now. There's no rain in their forecast for the next 2 weeks. China's dry, and there's things to monitor in Western Europe and the Black Sea region. So Minneapolis wheat, you take a look at what it's done, and it's already tipped over. I mean, it's been on fire, somewhat almost parabolic. Now, can it keep going? Well, it depends on how bad it is. Sure, yeah, it could keep going. Kansas City and Chicago are being drugged for the ride. On the last Commitment of Traders report, the funds were still short over 100,000. So I'm guessing it's less than that now. But yes, there's still more for them to get out of, and if we end up having a little bit more of a production issue there as well, yeah, I mean, for wheat to rally another $1, it's not uncommon with the way the wheat market is. It's a thin market, and when it goes, it goes.
South Dakota Governor Dennis Dugard has declared a statewide emergency because of the ongoing drought conditions in his state. The most recent drought monitor is showing 80% of that state at some level of dryness or drought. As part of the state of emergency, South Dakota will ease hang and transportation restrictions to assist ag producers. Meanwhile, in North Dakota, State Ag Commissioner Doug Gehring got a first-hand look at the drought conditions. Gehring says there was a 4 to 5 inch rainfall deficit from March 10th to June 10th in central North Dakota. He says it is heartbreaking to see livestock producers lined up for almost a mile at auction with a lack of adequate grazing and feed. They're selling their genetics that took years to build. Now, there have been calls to open CRP to early haying and grazing. U.S. ethanol interests applying changes to blend requirements in Mexico. The Mexican Energy Regulatory Commission just announcing it will increase the amount of ethanol that can be blended into Mexican gas supplies from less than 6% to 10%. Now, that covers all but 3 of the country's largest metro areas. Bob Deneen with the Renewable Fuels Association says the decision will mean Mexico will have blend levels consistent with fuels sold and used throughout the United States and Canada, adding that it should help drive trade and investment in the North American ethanol industry. Another busy week for Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue. He's planning his first visit to his home state of Georgia in his new official capacity. He'll be meeting with his Mexican and Canadian counterparts for a tour of a Georgia Port Authority and a farm in Vidalia. This is the first face-to-face meeting of the Ag chiefs since the NAFTA discussions began in earnest. 5 nations with some of the fastest growing economies in the world are attempting to align their views on key global issues like trade and climate as the U.S. withdraws from multi-nation deals. Collectively, they are known as the BRICS nation. Officials from Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are meeting this week in Beijing. The foreign ministers are discussing the impact of the U.S. withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accords and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, together, the BRICS countries account for roughly 40% of the world's population and 20% of global economy. All 5 countries are members of the G20, although their economic prospects have declined somewhat amid crisis in Brazil and South Africa and the effects of sanctions lodged against Russia by the West. We have an update this morning on Tyson Foods lobbyist Matt Micah, who was shot multiple times during last week's shooting at the congressional baseball practice. A Tyson spokesman says Micah remains in the intensive care unit at a Washington hospital following several surgeries. In a statement, the family saying, while we know there will be difficult and challenging days ahead for Matt and our family, the physicians and specialists at Matt's side expect a full recovery. Mike Hoffman helping us ease into the week. He has a look at crop comments on this Tuesday morning. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning to you, Clinton. In Burt County, Nebraska, Matt Nelson is trying to beat the rain as he side dresses some fertilizer. And Paul Gross sending us these photos from Isabella County, Michigan. Farmers were waiting for a rain to plant edible beans over a week ago. He says farmers are still on hold. He took this picture after 3 inches of rain. Some producers received another 4 inches of rain over the weekend. And taking a look at the weather map, you can see another system diving through the upper portions of the country. That won't have a lot of moisture, but we're watching a tropical-like system in the Gulf of Mexico. We'll talk about that and have your forecast, but first, here are some hometown temps.
Visit farmjournalpro.com. Trusted analysis, professional insight. farmjournalpro.com.
Up next, we'll dig into the dairy markets, including pricing potential and export sales, and ranchers in the Lone Star State relying on man's best friend to protect their investments in livestock. Details as we head in the country.
Get the roots your crops need by getting Radiate first. Visit lovelandproducts.com/radiate. See your CPS dealer today.
In agribusiness, it was a wild start to the trading week. Let's get details from the floor of the CME in Chicago.
It's been a two-sided day with cattle going lower and the hogs going higher. Cattle going lower despite some very strong beef cutout values that imply that the wholesale market is holding very strong. But the market really more concerned about the chart formations, which with a lower close today would imply a breakout to the downside from a sideways trade. This breakout has been developing over the past few sessions. And B, ideas are that we'll see significant increases in cattle available to the market as we start to move to the second half of the summer and into the fall. It's been a mixed day in the grain markets with soybeans and wheat trading higher on the day. Led by wheat, and also rice trading significantly higher on the day, but corn really trading a little bit lower on the day. Also, the lack of the market's ability to really sustain a rally here over the last week or so implied to many traders here that the farmers had sold a lot of corn into the cash market and that the cash market was really well loaded with corn right now. And that's probably true. Thanks very much. This is Jack Scoville. I'm Vice President of Price Futures Group here on the CME Group floor with some comments for the markets today.
Here at the Agribusiness Desk, I'm Brian Doherty, Stuart Peterson. Brian, let's talk about this dairy market. You know, the WASDE report came out, and they're anticipating better milk prices through the rest of this year and next year. What do you see in this market is maybe starting to play into it?
Well, weaker dollar, that's one.
Yeah,
certainly, sure. We're exporting good demand, good economy. You look at the stock market, we continue to push into new highs practically on a weekly basis. So it looks like we're seeing some better money flow, better economies, and people are just eating, looks like more cheese, eating more in general. To counter that, though, the dairy producer hasn't cut back. We're still looking at significant production, high efficiency, ample feed grains, ample hay so far this year, maybe not in the Northwest so much, but the big dairies in the central Midwest, in particular my home state of Wisconsin, ample feed supplies right now, and quality feed supplies. So
sure.
that means probably big production yet. So when you look at like the last 5 months of the year, you can look at a $17 average price on those months. So if you haven't sold, consider selling 25%. Scale up into this. One thing we can say with some certainty looking back, that each of these rallies we've seen in recent history, they've proven to be a sell opportunity. And so we want to ward against those big drop-offs. The production's there that could happen.
Yeah, as we talk a lot about the components and the cheese and that kind of stuff really driving this market.
Yeah.
Do we know if exports are going to continue to hang strong? I mean, is this dollar supportive of that?
Well, we think that they will. There's no reason to think that today that they won't. And then when you look at the components, of course, the pricing differentials throughout the country, but cheese is in high demand right now. It's providing a good base for milk prices. Liquid milk, or that's a little bit different story if you're in different parts of the country. But as we look forward, we really like the demand both domestically and worldwide. The thing to watch really, though, is what the grain markets do. If they start to run tight on inventory, or if beef prices rally back, then maybe we can see some call liquidation. But right now, I would still sell into the rallies and buy puts or sell calls.
All right, good advice. Appreciate it, Brian. Thanks for being here. We'll be back with more Agday in just a minute.
To discuss marketing strategies, call 800-334-9779 or visit stewartpeterson.com.
Welcome back to Agday. Your meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, not a lot of rain set up across the middle of the country here, but cooler temperatures.
Yeah, a big difference than what we were seeing last week, so there's no doubt about that. Now in the tropics, that's a different story. In fact, we have a system in the Gulf of Mexico that more than likely will be at least a tropical storm before too long, and we're going to show that as an area of low pressure on my weather map, but more than likely, over the next day or two, we're going to see this become a tropical storm or even a hurricane as it heads toward the Texas Gulf Coast, the way it looks. Farther north, though, again, like Clinton said, this is all cooler, drier air than we've been seeing. Each little impulse kind of rotating around a big area of low pressure in eastern Canada can produce mainly some afternoon variety showers and thunder showers. Most of those are not going to be anything like severe, but they could be heavy for 5 or 10 minutes as they kind of come on through. So that's something we'll watch, but you can see there's kind of two fronts causing that, otherwise high pressure dominating. Next front in the Pacific Northwest will produce a little bit of moisture as it comes into the northern plains as we head into the day tomorrow, and you can see that as we continue to watch the area of low pressure or tropical storm or hurricane as we head through the next couple of days. It does look like that is projected to move toward the Texas Gulf Coast. So that is something that is a big concern for those areas, especially if this becomes a hurricane, then you're talking damage besides the heavy rain. So that's something we'll be watching for you this week. But you can see mainly afternoon variety thunderstorms, showers and thunderstorms along that cold front. They'll be scattered. Same thing along the second cold front through the northern plains and the western plains and eastern portions of the Rockies. Precipitation estimates over the past 24 hours, most of it's been in the Gulf Coast area and on up the eastern seaboard. Adding in the next 36 hours, you can see how we do add a little bit of moisture here and there across the Corn Belt, but the vast majority is going to be along the Gulf Coast with that system coming northward into the northern portions of the Gulf. High temperatures this afternoon, look at that. 60s and 70s mainly throughout the Great Lakes and the parts of New England, 80s throughout the southeast, even some 70s showing up. 90s been shoved back to the southwestern plains and triple digits in parts of the far southwest. Look at the low in Phoenix on our computer model, 94 degrees. And then you can see as we head through time, we are going to see things continue to stay very warm in the southwestern plains, western plains, but especially the southwest. This is going to be a heat wave for some of the folks down there. There's the jet stream keeping it cool for the Great Lakes and the Northeast for most of this week. More energy diving into the Great Lakes and the northern plains as we head toward the weekend. So that's going to keep things on the cool side. Much of the Corn Belt cooler than normal, not necessarily real cool. I'm Mike, that's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. First of all, for Gillette, Wyoming, partly sunny and much warmer, high temperature of 91. Waco, Texas, mostly sunny, hot and humid, high of 95. And Peru, Indiana, partly sunny and comfortably warm, the high around 80.
Well, up next, the Dairy Report looks at new opportunities for exports. And later, man's best friend can be tons of help out on the range. We'll head to the Lone Star State to see how these cow dogs are helping the work get done.
Agday. Brought to you by Top Third Ag Marketing. Farmer first with a plan for every market.
In our dairy report, first beef, now dairy, heading for China's ports. The U.S. and China signing a fresh memorandum of understanding that should increase U.S. dairy's access to Chinese markets. CEO of the Dairy Export Council, Tom Vilsack, says the new agreement holds potential for milk, cheese, infant formula, and dairy ingredients. He says China is already the world's largest dairy importer, and opportunities for growth are tremendous. And last year, the U.S. shipped about $380 million worth of dairy to China. The latest drought monitor is showing increasing drought and dryness in the Midwest. Now take a look at this map. It's a different perspective on that drought. The dark green areas represent major hay areas. USDA says 15% of the nation's alfalfa hay acreage is within an area of drought. And as you can see, nearly all of North Dakota and much of South Dakota hay fields are in that area. North Dakota has about 1.5 million acres of alfalfa, but its all hay acreage hits 2.7 million acres. Dairy farm workers calling out ice cream maker Ben & Jerry's over the weekend. The workers protesting at its Waterbury factory Saturday, calling for better pay and living conditions on farms that supply milk to the facility. Ben & Jerry's has long been an advocate of social activism. In 2015, it agreed to join a program called Milk with Dignity that aims to ensure farms provide workers fair wages and decent housing. The program leaders and the company are still negotiating the terms of that agreement. About 85% of the milk it uses for North American ice cream comes from roughly 80 Vermont dairies. Up next, help from an extra hand, or paw, or 4 Texas cow dollars when we come back.